Welcome in, everyone, as we get set to preview the Oklahoma City Thunder and the Denver Nuggets in the Western Conference semifinals. Thank you for tuning in here on a Chase to the Championship. My name is Jeremie Poplin. That is Steve McGehee from News 9. And, Steve, it's been a little while since we've been able to chat, and the Thunder have been waiting patiently for this Nuggets and Clippers series to finally wrap up. It did, and now it's Denver. But I think before we dive into that series, let's kind of go back and just revisit a final few items from the Memphis series. Is there anything that stands out to you that's kind of just hanging out there right now that's left over from the last two games in that series before the Thunder were able to complete the sweep?
Well, the positives were they won in 4 games. I like the fact that they were tested in Game 3 and Game 4. That series definitely looked different once we went to Tennessee. And obviously, when Ja Morant went down, I was looking down right when that happened. I'm like, I think this game could change right here and there. And it did, because I didn't think that the lead they had was up to 27-28. I don't think that was going to hold in the second half if Ja didn't come back. So that was a great experience for the Thunder to kind of get into that rally mode, put their rally cap on, if you will, and they found a way to win. And then they were tested again in game number 4. And Memphis, I'll give Memphis a lot of credit. They played a lot tougher than I thought they were going to play, and that went down to the wire, and that was another learning experience for this Thunder team. But Oklahoma City didn't shoot great in those games in Tennessee, but, it showed that they were the better team.
The one thing that I'll take away from the Memphis series is that this is a complete version of a team. And the questions, we even addressed this in one of the previous podcasts, which was if SGA doesn't necessarily have an SGA type game or maybe a couple of those performances. And lo and behold, it happened. There were a few games where he just didn't look quite the norm, so to speak, of the MVP candidate that we've seen. And there could be a number of reasons for that. But what we did see, we saw the overall core of this team, the deep bench that was strategically put in place for a reason, step up to every single challenge that happened during the Memphis series. And that, to me, is a massive positive because it answers questions. If you were looking for negatives on the Oklahoma City Thunder, those were the only negatives that you could really come up with from a national perspective heading into the Memphis series. And to me, those were answered in those 4 games.
Yeah, it was shooting. Their shooting could be better, and I think it will be better moving forward. And Shea, a lot of those shots normally go in. We're not going in, but as you mentioned, the Thunder bench, they don't need Shea to have 35 points every night. Shea can also facilitate and give assists and rebounds and play defense. He's a good two-way player. So they don't need Shea to score 30, 35 in that series. Maybe this series they do. I would imagine the shots will start to drop for him, and that's bad news for Denver. But Denver, as we know, a much, much better team than the Memphis Grizzlies. My question, we'll probably talk about Denver here in a second, but Denver's bench, that's probably worrisome for them going into this series. But the better team won between Oklahoma City and Memphis. They obviously, after they were knocked out, Ja was kind of saying, hey, if I'm still playing. But, those are, as Steven Adams would say, words. We'll never know. We'll never know about that. There's always next year for them. But Oklahoma City, they're getting their hands full with this next series. It's not supposed to get any easier when you reach the semifinals and the finals. So they're going to have their hands full with Denver. Really looking forward to it. There's so many headlines in this game, but I'm just happy that we finally know Oklahoma City's opponent and we know when we're playing.
Going back to the Ja statements, to me, this is just a personal thing, but Ja is at least nothing but consistent. Now, maybe there's a lot of negative in his level of consistency that's there, but I would expect nothing less for something like that to pour out of Ja Morant's mouth after they get swept like that in a series like that. So at least Ja's remaining consistent with who he is. Now on to the Nuggets series. You said it right there, to me, storylines. And looking back at the Clippers and Nuggets series and thinking about, all right, which one of these two teams is going to advance and play Oklahoma City? There were storylines galore from both matchups, whether it be the Clippers or the Nuggets. Now that it is Denver, what are a couple of those that stand out to you before we get to the obvious one, which is two MVP candidates going head to head?
Well, that's the number one headline going in, but we have to remember this is not SGA versus Nikola Jokic. It kind of reminds me of the Chet when they take on the Spurs. This is not Chet versus Victor versus Thunder, and we may hear that along the way in this series. And it doesn't sound like the MVP award is going to be announced this week. So next week, I would imagine. So something to think about. But the storylines, one that comes to mind is the fact that Russell Westbrook is coming home to his, I guess, his second hometown. And this is he's been here before, but this is different now. This is a playoff series. This is a must-win situation. He faced the Thunder when he was with the Rockets, but that game was in Orlando with fake crowd noise and no fans. So the fan loyalty for Russell Westbrook, Thunder fans that love him, will be tested in this series because chances are he's going to irritate the fans with his play, and he's going to make a steal and dunk or make a key three late in the game. He's been exceptional down this stretch. Yes. Denver Nuggets been great off the bench, great when he's starting, more good than bad. A veteran Russ, that's what you want, and that could be a problem for Oklahoma City moving forward.
I want to jump into the Nuggets and Clippers series just to kind of give us a sense here of what we're talking about with OKC. What were your takeaways from the Nuggets-Clippers series, which, by the way, is a thoroughly entertaining series? I mean, to me, that was one of the more entertaining series of the entire playoffs that we've seen so far. Just a couple of things. It was weird because it felt like through 3 games, and I don't know if you feel the same way, but to me it felt like I'm kind of surprised that the Clippers aren't up 3-0. I mean, it felt like that they had everything figured out with Denver, and then we kind of saw some of that championship testicular fortitude, I guess, for a lack of a better term, kind of shine through. And a couple of players like Russ really elevated their play. We had a otherworldly Murray performance in one of the games as well. What stood out from you from the Nuggets and Clippers?
Well, they didn't flinch. I mean, Alex Caruso mentioned it Sunday at practice, saying, we saw Game 7 last night. Denver looks like they've been there and done that before in a Game 7 situation, a closeout game, and they played like that towards the end of the second quarter, and then the third quarter they start to separate from the Clippers. But I don't know about you, Pop, but Clippers were supposed to win this series. Lakers were supposed to win the series against the Timberwolves.
That's right.
The teams, there were no LA teams right now, and we'll see what happens to Golden State, but California may be knocked out in round 1. But a lot of people thought, and then the Clippers had won 8 in a row going into the playoffs. They thought they were going to be, they were playing solid when they lost to the Thunder out there in March. Kawhi was back, playing healthy. James Harden was playing to his level. James Harden did not play to his level last night. I don't think he scored in the second half. That was a problem for them. But Denver, ended up being the better team. And Ty Lue, you would think, well, Ty Lue in a Game 7, I think he was unbeaten in Game 7s going into this one. Don't quote me on that. But he was the better coach, I guess. But, home court on a Game 7, I think means everything, and that's going to be an Oklahoma City's advantage until they're done.
There were times in that series, much like the Thunder series, where you look and maybe it's a subpar outing from Jokic. Murray had, the one tremendous game, but it was a lot of the defensive effort from the Nuggets, which is weird because at one point in time, we talked about this, how in the second half after the All-Star break, their defensive rating plummeted. I mean, fell off an absolute cliff. They bounced back here a little bit towards the end, but it was defensive performances, and then it was Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr., Christian Brown as well. That trio really helped kind of pull this Nuggets team through that series.
Yeah, I think the coaching teams, I'm a big Mike Malone fan, but whatever reason, it wasn't working, I guess, internally. Adelman comes in, and he's doing a good job. He wins his first playoff series. Second playoff series in a row for the Thunder where they face an interim head coach. And, of course, the Memphis coach ended up getting that job as well. I'd imagine Adelman will get the job for the Denver Nuggets, so win or lose against the Thunder. Denver, they're starting 5. I think it's one of the best starting 5s in the NBA.
Yes.
And they're going to have to play a lot of minutes against the Thunder because the Thunder are going to throw waves of players at them, 10 even up to 11, just to play defense on Jokic and Murray, whoever has the hot hand. So, that's advantage Thunder. But they only played 7 guys in the first half yesterday. They just kind of work with what they have. But when those 5 guys are all on, Christian Brown has really upped his game this year. I think that's been a difference for Denver, the reason why they have an uptick, especially late this season. Christian Brown is starting to play like a a solid starter on a very good basketball team. So, and he plays good defense as well. We saw that in the Clippers series. Um, I don't know if there's any more I can add on what the Clippers just did not show up. They showed up for a little bit, but they did not show up after halftime.
All right, now specifically to the Thunder and the Nuggets. You mentioned it. It's hard not to. It's not going to be, the difference between the series, as you said. It's not Chet versus the Spurs, but it is 1,000% the biggest storyline period, and that is the fact that you've got the dueling MVPs that are going back up against each other. You mentioned how Westbrook and James Harden, in 2017, they were the 1-2 finishers in the MVP. They met in the first round that was there. This doesn't happen that often at all, but this carries the amount of star power with it to drag even the casual NBA fan, through a series like this, because you have two of the biggest names in the league going head-to-head every single night.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the schedule was, but when I saw that the awards were announced this week and MVP wasn't one, I'm like, oh, they're going to. This has been announced before. Again, May 8th, I think, was last year.
Yes.
But they're going to stretch this thing out. But keep in mind, by next Sunday, they'll have played 4 games in the series.
Which is wild.
They're moving right along. Depending on what the other series does, whether it's Houston or Golden State versus Minnesota, they may be playing one game off, one game off, one game off. I think that favors Oklahoma City. 5, 6, and 7 play out that way. Now, if there's a couple of day breaks in between 5, 6, and 7, or between 4 and 5, and then 5 and 6, that's going to help out Denver. So that part of the schedule from 5 and on hasn't been out yet. They're kind of waiting to see what the other side of the bracket does. But I'll say it again. It's going to be, Shea's going to get his points. Nikola Jokic is going to get his points. It's going to be the other guys surrounding him. That's going to decide this series. And I still, tilt towards the Thunder just because what they have coming off the bench. And if someone gets in foul trouble, they can bring in this guy or that guy. And there's a reason why they brought in Hartenstein and Caruso. They're going to be a big factor in this series. That
was one of my next points, and we'll just start right there. This, to me, is one of the primary reasons why you brought in Isaiah Hartenstein. It allows so much. It frees up Chet, right, to roam a little bit more. But when this was done, when they went out and they got iHeart, one of the first things that popped into my mind was the Nuggets logo. When you see, like, hey, signings, like he's here, I was automatically thinking of the Nuggets in a scenario like this because we saw where their weaknesses were last year through the playoff run. Yeah. They addressed every single one of them, but for some reason, Steve, the Nuggets logo just screamed at me when I saw that iHeart had signed with OKC.
He got to play in Denver once this year. It was the preseason game, and then he missed the first 2 games there out in Denver. But he had an impact even in that preseason game. You could see it. But, it's going to take an army to slow down Jokic. But, you're going to let Jokic get his points. It's just the other guy. It's the Peyton Watson coming off the bench. Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook was the reason why they won Game 2 in Denver in the regular season. He comes in and scores 29 points. Thunder, I think, I had like a 16-point lead in that second matchup out in Denver, and then Russ comes in and starts hitting some shots and playing defense, and it kind of sparked the Nuggets to hang on and beat the Thunder late in that second matchup. So Jokic, just an incredible player because he can pass, he can rebound, he gets everyone involved, and same with Shea. Shea loves to get everybody else involved. I think that the keys in this game will be Dub and Chet, and the back and Jamal Murray, of course, not getting hot. Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon. It comes down to great starting 5 versus their great starting 5. But I think, and I'll say it again, you got to tilt towards the Thunder when it comes to bench players.
To my point about letting Chet kind of roam free a little bit, being able to – it's going to help so much being able to just roam off of Gordon and yet not get absolutely just demolished in the post. I mean, to take a physical beating on that. And the spacing that this is going to create in a matchup like this, I can't wait to see what the X's and O's version of this looks like, say 2.5 games in to this series, to see just how much of a role that it's absolutely played, because that now is the time. I keep going back to those moments where I remember Mark mentioning after Chet came back and got healthy, he's like, we've got a stretch of time here to get this right. And if you remember, everyone wanted it to work magically, like right off the bat. And Mark was just saying, hey, you've got to have a little patience. Well, that time with patience is now over. Now it's actually time to see in a lineup like this with an otherworldly superstar like Jokic, how those two can impact this entire series.
Yeah, Chet, remember when he came back, they played Denver like back-to-back home games. So Chet was still trying to get some stamina going, so we didn't see the real Chet like we're seeing right now. So I'm interested to see what that looks like, Chet and iHeart together, with Chet kind of almost back to where he was when the season started. So I think that back-to-back was the first time Chet had played back-to-back games.
Yes.
I think on that after coming back from that injury, after that long layoff. I'm interested to see what he looks like, but his 3-point shooting was one of the positives in that series with Memphis. I don't see that, wavering at all, but I remember that first game in Denver, I think he had 4 blocks, 25 points, and 14 rebounds. So he was definitely an impact. So he's going to have a game like that, I think, maybe 1 or 2 against the Nuggets in the series. He's that impactful. And he's I guess you'd call your third scoring option. So that's a pretty good option to have.
A couple of things to keep an eye on. Oklahoma City is 19-0 when they hold their opponents below 100 points. They're 50-1 when they keep them below 110. By the way, Denver's 1-16 when it did not crack 110 points. Jokic and Murray, they've combined to score 30-plus 41 times. OKC's only permitted an opposing score to do that 12 times all season, which, by the way, is the lowest total in the league, which gets me to Murray. Because if there's one wild card in this, and we even saw this, I think, right, Steve, at the game in the last Nuggets win, like, we know what type of a different team that Denver can be when Jamal Murray is playing almost like the Orlando bubble version of Jamal Murray in 2020. And also that guy that kind of helped them win the title in 2023 as well. He, to me, is kind of the X factor in this series for Denver to be not only competitive, but to maybe win a game or two in this series.
He's not leaving the court in round one. He played 42 out of 48 minutes. Jokic is playing 40. I was just looking at the minutes played. It goes Aaron Gordon 38 and Christian Brown 39 minutes a game. They're only playing 7 guys, really.
Yeah.
And everyone else, I remember Jalen Pickett hit a couple of big shots against the Thunder. He's only averaging 5 minutes a game. DeAndre Jordan played a little bit in that second game, and I think he was a factor as well. Don't let DeAndre Jordan beat you, that's for sure. And Denver got hot in that fourth quarter. Last here, I think they were at one point 10 out of 14 or 11 out of 14, and that's what it's going to take to beat a team like the Oklahoma City Thunder. They shot 60% from the field, I think, in that game. It's starting to come back to me now. That fourth quarter, they couldn't miss. I mean, I think they made at least 5 or 6 shots in a row to start the fourth quarter, and the Thunder just could not get back into the game. But it was an odd one, back-to-back home games with the same team. I don't know if there's put much stock into it. I don't put too much stock in the regular season's matchups anyway, because the playoffs are just a different animal. It's refereed different. The crowd noise is at least 2 more volumes higher.
The Nuggets really thrive on their fast break game. They're one of the best teams in the league, highest scoring teams in that in particular, and they did it again against the Clippers. Clippers just looked like they had tired legs, especially in Game 6, and we know for a fact in Game 7 that will not be the case with Oklahoma City. The Thunder had both the lowest turnover rate, 10.3 per 100, and the highest opponent turnover rate at 18.7 per 100 in the first round. They're going to take care of the basketball. They're going to limit the ability for Denver to get out and push that ball, Steve. And by the way, on the opposite side of that, the Nuggets ranked 25th in turnover differential in the regular season, and they had 12 more turnovers than the Thunder over the 4-game season series. So in terms of advantages there, that's another one that you can put in the box for the Thunder.
Even when the Thunder won, I'm looking at my notes here, Game 3, they won 127-103 against the Denver Nuggets. Thunder had 5 turnovers. Denver only had 7 in the game. That was interesting. But Aaron Gordon got hurt in that game.
Yes.
And Game 4, Dub got hurt. There's all kinds of little scenarios on why this team won or that. If there was one game that I would like maybe lean on a little bit, would be that very first game in Denver. And Oklahoma, Denver's coming in. They had won the NBA title 2 years ago. They got bounced early last year. They felt motivated. I'm like, hey, we're still Denver. We can win this thing just like anyone else. And then Oklahoma City held them to under 90 points on opening night at Ball Arena, and they did it without iHeart. They did it with defense, and defense is going to win this one. For Denver, they're going to have to shoot like they did the last time they played here when they scored 140 points.
Let's talk a little bit about this layoff before we wrap things up. Today is what, day 8 of rest that Oklahoma City will have.
They played last Saturday.
So with all of these days rest, and you've been there, everyone has tried to ask them in a number of ways. Seems like they've asked Mark every single day about the amount of rest that they've had. I always view it as a positive. It is a long, long season. Maybe when you wrap up a series in a sweep like this and you're looking for something either negative or looking for some sort of pathway forward to figure out, all right, could you be potentially rusty? You have to ask the question. But with as long as the season is, I would never complain about this number of days off. And history also shows you, Steve, that teams that sweep, playing against teams that have a long series, especially 7 games, it typically works out in favor, usually in 5 games, of the team that's coming off of a sweep. One, typically, is because they're just better. They're just better in general. And I think that's the case here with Oklahoma City. But they didn't really seem to think, and maybe I'm different, but it didn't come across this way in interviews, that they were really worried about the amount of rest. I know SGA acknowledged it, but everyone seemed just kind of very relaxed and cool about the fact that they had the opportunity to prepare this long.
I think they loved the fact that they could watch and see who their next opponent would be. I'd love to know if the Thunder was kind of, 5 days ago tilting more towards the Clippers or tilting more towards the Nuggets, because I think, it was going to be Clippers. A lot of people thought that, and then it turned out it wasn't that way at all. These two teams are no stranger to each other. This one, I think they played in the preseason, so they played actually 5 times going into this. There are no secrets. Defensive strategies, I think both teams have put out their defensive strategies. I'm not sure if there's anything else new they can show that the other team hasn't seen before from them or from somebody else. The layoff, though, maybe there'll be some rust in the first quarter, but you have that long layoff, and say you had to start game 1 on the road, which wouldn't even happen anyway. I could see that being a problem. But when you have the home crowd on your side, that rust will wipe off pretty fast.
These two teams, they split 4 games this season. They're 8-8 since 21-22. Head-to-head playoff history, each have won 2 series each when it comes down to that. It's been about as even as you can ask for between these two. We just know for a fact that this is a much deeper team based off of your answers with Denver's bench, what we've seen from Oklahoma City so far, and then the fact that they've rested. To me, I think game 1, like if Denver to have a chance in this series, to me, has to really pull a shock here in game 1. Yeah. I don't necessarily know if anything's possible, but with the way the emotional aspect of closing out the Clippers the way that they did, the quick turnaround with travel, this is no pun intended, this is a big mountain to climb for them in game 1 here versus the Thunder.
Yeah, I don't think it's a must-win. The Thunder must win game 1.
No, not at all.
I don't think so, because the Thunder can win on the road. I think Denver's going to win a game here in Oklahoma City, and I think the Thunder is going to win at least one in Denver. And then we'll go from there. Maybe it's going to be 2-2 with Game 5 coming back here. I would probably lean towards that way. We'll see how it plays out. But as the series goes on, if it does go 7 and they're playing every other night, I think that definitely factors Oklahoma City, with Denver relying so much on their starting 5 to get them to the finish line every night. But if we start to see a break between 4 and 5 and 5 and 6 and 6 and 7, that could favor Denver a little bit. But I'm still lean Oklahoma City's the starting 5. I think they're even. Both teams have strong starting 5. So home court advantage, Thunder have the advantage there. Head coach, Thunder have the advantage there. Thunder have the advantage there. Denver can be a better shooting team, so maybe they have a better advantage there shooting-wise. A strong playoff experience player in Russell Westbrook, but Crusoe's been there, done that too. So that's kind of maybe even right there as well. So it's going to be a fun series, but if Oklahoma City is going to win, let's see, they have to maybe win Game 6 in Denver to get it done. If not, just win your home games. You win all 4 games at home, you're advancing. But it should be fun. I don't think it's going to be 5 games or less unless someone gets hurt. And I don't want you don't want to see anybody get hurt in this series like we did last one. That's probably why it went 4 games with Morant getting hurt. So if someone gets hurt, that could change it. But this series, Pop, I think is going at least 6 games.
Last thing, I think both of us would agree on this is that we know that they're thin, but this is still an incredibly dangerous Denver team that is capable. And the Thunder are not going to take them lightly. I hope any fans that are watching do not take them lightly either, because this is a very dangerous championship-driven squad that has gone through a lot here in the last month, and there's nothing like feeling like the world is against you to galvanize a group. I think we both think they have the potential to do that. The Thunder are the better team, in my opinion, but you don't take them lightly at all.
No way. It seems like they've been sparked with the coaching change.
Yes.
They just beat the Clippers, with Kawhi being healthy. That was funny about Kawhi. That was the first time he finished the season since 2020.
Dude, that's insane.
Hey, are you 2020? Last time he finished the season playing and not, out for the year. That's incredible. But Denver, they can upset the Thunder, but it's going to take their starting 5 to just play lights out for 4 games. And Oklahoma City to be subpar in 4 games. Do you buy that? I don't think I buy that. I don't think that's going to happen, but anything's possible. But Denver, as you mentioned, 2 years ago, won it all. So nothing's going to we're down 2-1 or this crowd's loud. None of that's going to faze them at all.
Well, game 1 coming up Monday, Cinco de Mayo. It's a 8:30 start on TNT. Game 2 Wednesday, also an 8:30 start on TNT. And then we're moving right along. As you said, by this time next week, we'll be 4 games in, believe it or not, to this series. So we're going to cram a lot of basketball in on the next week. Reminder, everyone, keep paying attention to the News 9 YouTube channel, news9.com as well, for all of our Thunder preview articles and all of the coverage that we have anchored by my man, Steve McGehee. Steve, thank you so much, man, for joining us here. And we'll look forward to doing, a lot of these coming up over the next week or so as the Western Conference semifinals are finally here, man. Thank you.
This until June 19th or 18th, or the month of May. We have 31 days, and it's going to feel like 31 days. I think I'm impressed here. You got a picture of me wearing a suit and tie. That's a rarity for me.
I know, it's so rare for me. They don't even have one of me in a suit and tie anywhere at all. And you know what? I'm good with that. We can keep it that way.
Day after the pandemic got casual.
That's right. Everyone got casual. Every broadcast.
When the coaches start wearing a suit, I'll wear a suit. But, I will wear a tie if they make it to the NBA Finals. That's a promise. But I'll wear a tie.
All right. We'll keep you to that one. All right, Steve, again, thank you so much. And thank you to you for tuning in and watching. Hit that like and subscribe button here on YouTube. And we'll see you for a recap of Game 1 and a preview of Game 2 on Tuesday. My friend Steve McGehee, Jeremie Poplin signing off, saying see you on Tuesday after the Thunder and Denver game.
Adios.